Can you take any credit for the past accomplishments of your ancestors? And if humans ever explore the galaxy and we meet some primitive aliens, should we share our technology with them? These questions are more related than you might think, and I'm going to answer them both. Galileo Galilei, the father of observational astronomy, discovered the rings of Saturn and the largest moons of Jupiter. He lived in Italy, Tuscany. Do Italians, or Tuscans, who lived at the same time as Galileo, get any credit for his discoveries? How about the descendants of Galileo, or the descendants of the Tuscans who lived near him? Basic individualism would say no. If they didn't invent the thing themselves, they get no credit. And I say, maybe they do get some credit. Let's take a look at someone more modern than Galileo. Russell Ohl worked at Bell Labs in Holmdel, New Jersey. Russell discovered the photovoltaic effect of silicon. If you've heard of PV panels or solar panels, you can thank Russell. He did a lot of important work. Russell was able to do those things and focus on his work because he didn't have more pressing issues he had to deal with. Imagine if every night in Holmdel, he was worried that burglars would break into his house. Imagine if every day he was concerned that his work would be burned down by arsonists. What if the local grocer that sold him food had been murdered over the weekend? If Holmdel was chaotic, if Holmdel was violent, if it became difficult to obtain safe food in Holmdel, Russell would have needed to use his massive brain not on solar panels and photovoltaic technology, but he would have had to use that brain to secure himself, to secure his home, and to secure a safe supply of food and water. But remember, places like Holmdel are not intrinsically violent. It's people that can be violent, or not violent. Holmdel is nice because the people there are nice. The streets in Holmdel are clean because people clean them. The stores have good, safe food because someone built a store and then they stocked it with good food. This does not happen on its own. Russell's work took a lot of time and mental effort, like Galileo's work. To live that sort of life where you're absorbed in scientific and technological testing relies on other people. You could think, oh, everyone's kind of an individual. Everyone's doing their own thing. We're like islands, just try and stay out of each other's way. But that's not how civilization works. We're not islands. Everything we do affects each other. There is a social web, and the quality of that social web matters. A low-quality web, or a non-existent web, means you have to focus on survival. You have to do things that provide immediate security for you. With a higher quality social web, you could specialize into jobs that may have no immediate survival advantage to you or anyone else. But if things change, if your neighbors, if your community decides to start acting differently, they could turn your life upside down. They could turn it into a living hell within a day. All that science, all that complex scientific advancement stops when things go to hell. But for both Russell and Galileo, their communities, Holmdel and Tuscany, people went to their jobs. They stayed fairly peaceful. Maybe not perfect, but peaceful enough. They did enough of the stuff they needed to do to maintain the quality of the social web. The quality of the social web in Tuscany and Holmdel were at least the minimum for what these two men needed to do their work. Now that's important. Some places in the world aren't peaceful enough. Some places couldn't have supported Galileo or Russell as they did their work. But those places can't support this kind of work because the people in those places are choosing to do things that are not conducive to a high-quality social web, or they're specifically choosing to do things that degrade the web, right? We might call those people degenerates. Criminals are always the ultimate degenerates because they directly threaten our ability to have a civilization. So if a group of people chooses to act in a way that allows the success of Russell, if their choices lead to that technology, then they deserve some credit. No, maybe they weren't as smart as Russell, but few people are. I mean, he was a real smart guy, but he needed them to act in the civilized manner that they did. Russell built the technology in question, but he built that technology on the web his community made. Every successful person, scientifically successful, financially successful, owes something to the community that allowed their success. In a very real way, you can't do it without them. If you, for example, started a successful business, I would never downplay all the work you'd put into it. But the community where you ran that business, where you got employees from, where your customers came from, that community is critical. And you owe something to those people for setting up a social web that was at least high enough quality that you needed for your success. Now let's talk about aliens. Imagine we encountered an alien planet. Humans are roaming around the galaxy, and we find some aliens on a planet. And we find these aliens are pretty smart, smarter than humans on average. If we gave them an IQ test, maybe their average would be 125, which would be pretty high. But also, when we analyze these aliens, they're quite aggressive. They have a strong fight or flight response, with an emphasis on fighting. And they're much less social overall than humans. And we can analyze hormone levels that go into fight or flight response and see that this is a biological propensity on their behalf. This is just part of who they are. Compared to us, biologically, they're more clever, more aggressive, more violent. And that's a relative thing. Maybe there's some aliens somewhere else that are even more violent or even smarter, ultra smart aliens. But at least compared to us, these aliens are smarter, more aggressive, and more violent. And we find that they're just on this one planet. They haven't made the technological advancements we have, but they've actually been living on this planet for a long, long time. They're certainly smart enough to make the advancements we have. They're smarter than us, after all. But the social web they create is very poor. None of these aliens can sit around and dedicate their lives to observational astronomy, even if they wanted to. Science, or observational astronomy, or advanced technological development, doesn't provide the short-term security that they need in their chaotic social environment. You engage in science because your short-term security is already provided for by other people. You're ready to devote yourself to making long-term progress towards goals that, well, by the time they happen, you'll be dead. If someone says to you, hey, listen, these aliens aren't going to be able to make the technology that we've made. Their social webs are just too low of a quality to engage in the scientific and technological advancements that we've done. So let's just give them our technology. Do you think we should do that? If we met an alien who was smarter than us, but whose societies were so chaotic, so violent, that they can't support long-term scientific endeavors, what might they do when they get our technology? What might they do to each other? What might they do to us? Do you think it's a good idea to just give them technology that we don't know if they could ever make it on their own? Just because an organism possesses the minimum required intelligence to theoretically develop a technology doesn't mean they can actually do it. There are many minimum required attributes, not just intelligence. There might be a minimum required ability to defer gratification, a minimum required ability to compromise. They're going to have to hit every quality in at least the minimum amount so they can build those social webs, those high-quality social webs that can support significant scientific and technological development. And given what we know about human psychology, that's probably a lot of different qualities, tied to a lot of different biological mechanisms like hormones. The only way you can be sure if an organism can create a technology might be to be hands off and watch to see if they can do it. Let's come back to Earth. If you're English, right? If you have English blood, right? I'll speak to you. Did you discover generalized binomial theorem? No, of course not. And it would be silly to pretend you discovered it. But the English people are very good at creating high-quality social webs. The English, as a collection of organisms, have created high-quality social webs for centuries. And because of that, right, that's why Newton was able to discover generalized binomial theorem. That's why he was able to advance mathematics. That's why William Sturgeon was able to make the first electromagnet. Galileo was able to document and discover our solar system because the Italian people make high-quality social webs, at least high quality enough for a man like Galileo to do that sort of work. When you look at advances in science and technology over the last centuries and millennia, it was never done by just a few renegade geniuses out in the woods on their own. They significantly relied on their co-ethnics to establish a healthy civilization or social web. In the book Human Accomplishment, Charles Murray details where most scientific accomplishments have come from. There is no one reason it came from one region rather than another. The fact that Europe is first doesn't mean that Europeans were or are the smartest. In fact, currently in intelligence testing, Europeans almost always test behind the Far East, like Korea and Japan. And some of the psychological traits that were needed for past accomplishments might actually not be the same psychological traits that we need for future accomplishments. So this graph could be shifted, in the future. But Westmen, right, white people, Westmen create Western civilization. If you're a Westman that contributes to our civilization, Western civilization, and you help create our high-quality social webs, no, you don't get to claim all the inventions of every Westman all throughout history. You don't get to claim the invention of every other white person. But you are carrying on a long tradition. You are carrying on the tradition of our people by creating our civilization. Western man, without you, Western woman, without you, we would have never had any of these things. And that is something you can be proud of. None of the work at Bell Labs, or the Large Hadron Collider, or NASA gets done in a vacuum. There is an interconnected social web, a network of Westmen creating Western civilization, farming, trucking, stocking shelves, inventorying warehouses, and making sure our drinking water is clean. That makes that possible. So do they get some credit? Yeah, they get some.